All right, it is Dallisa Hocking here. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Spirit and Spark TV. Scott Tejerian is like literally one of my favorite astrologers on the planet. He was part of the Planets and Prediction Summit. You may have caught him. He has so much information, and what I really appreciate are many things, but I feel that the content and the information that he gives us is very down to earth, approachable. It feels grounded, like we know what to do with it. And so I invited Scott to join me, and we're going to be looking at the astrology associated with November 8th, which has an eclipse on that day, and it's also the midterm elections in the United States. So we have a lot to dig into. Scott Tejerian is an astrologer and the author of the book, The Basics of Astrology. He also has an incredible astrology podcast. You should go subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can find it on YouTube. That's where I enjoy it. It's called The Weekly Transit Astrology. Scott's website is theweeklytransit.com. Scott, I'm so excited.
I'm excited too. Great to see you. Thanks for having me here, Dallisa.
Oh my gosh. So I was thrilled when you said yes, that you would come and talk to us.
Of course. No.
God. We are in the midst of eclipse season. We're putting this out just a couple of days before this November 8th one that we have coming up. Mm-hmm. You put together awesome charts that we're going to look at. So how are you feeling? Let's start there. How are you feeling right now in the world today?
I feel great. I mean, I guess, you look around the world and you see like crazy things happening and it's intense out there and all those sorts of things. And the planets definitely indicate a lot of intensity because, there's certain transits that haven't been occurring for several years, decades, maybe even a century. And, when they last occurred, life was intense on planet Earth. And so, but, I try not, my focus isn't to be a victim to, the planets. The planets are not here to punish us. They're here to guide us. And if we're following their guidance, then things should be more smooth rather than rocky. And they get rocky and intense when we're ignoring the energy.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. There are helpers.
Yes, exactly. So it's all about how you're working with the energy. A fire can warm a room on a cold winter's night, or it can burn down the house. So it's about recognizing the power that we have right now and how to utilize this power to the benefit of ourselves and those around us.
Yeah, beautifully stated. I've got the live chat going here on the video. So I would love to hear from everybody watching, if they want to share where they're watching from, but also how are they feeling right now? Are they feeling this intensity? I was sharing with you backstage, my cousin had her property struck by lightning. We had this massive storm roll through Texas. So it's been a really wacky and wild eclipse season already.
Yes.
So yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. It reminds me of something I heard recently from Ann Ortley. She was talking about, I think it was her, Fred Rogers, and how he used to say, like, always find the helpers. And so when you were talking about the planets, I'm like, oh, the planets are our helpers.
Yes.
So if we work with them, if we hold their hand and say, show me, what's the path? And if we're listening and being open to it, then we actually have a lot of helpers at our disposal.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think we show the beautiful charts that you put together. Wait till you see this, everybody. You watch a lot of, YouTube shows on astrology and it's kind of like always the standard chart that you see up there. And so Scott,
okay, here visual. It is.
Yes. Yeah, I know I'm talking it up, but look at this. I love it. Did you put this together?
Yes, everything's been hand drawn. So I've hand drawn everything. So yes, that's I do it this way because I want it to feel approachable, easy to digest. I want it to be simple. This is really how I learned astrology is just by drawing the symbols over and over again. So I've drawn literally thousands of charts, and this is one of them right here. So
I reached down and get my notebook because I'm in astrology class right now.
oh,
And
cool.
I have been drawing out.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I just go on there and trace the glyph, and
Yeah.
practice them. So
Well, and it's important to understand that astrology is a language. It's a language that communicates how the planets and stars influence life on Earth. And in order to understand any language, you want to begin at the beginning with the fundamentals. So these three symbols on top here are the root symbols of the language of astrology. If you understand these three symbols here, then it gives you a better opportunity to understand all of these symbols down here, because all of these symbols down here are made up of at least one of these three symbols on top. So this is the circle of spirit, which represents your eternal soul, no beginning, no end. The cross of matter, which represents the four elements of matter: fire, earth, air, water. And the crescent of receptivity, which represents giving, receiving, teaching, learning. So when you're looking at the sun and the moon, and we're talking about the lunar eclipse, the full moon in Taurus, the sun is two circles of spirit symbolizing your eternal soul, no beginning, no end, and the eternal divine light that shines within you. The sun is the giver of light, life, and vitality. Wherever the sun goes, it brings light, life, and vitality. The moon is easily recognizable because it looks like the moon, but the moon is actually two crescents of receptivity stuck together, symbolizing giving, receiving, teaching, learning at the deepest emotional level. When you see the moon in the sky, as you'll be able to during the full moon in Taurus, you'll be able to see it because it's reflecting the light of the sun. Therefore, the light that is emanating off of the moon is literally past light. Therefore, the moon represents your past, your upbringing, your childhood, the ones who raised and nurtured you, and your ancestors. The moon represents the home where you were raised, the home where you live now. It represents what you need to feel fulfilled emotionally and how you respond when you are emotional. So that's just a little backdrop of, what is this? What's going on here? But there's so much more happening here, because it's not just the full moon. There's also Mercury here, which is all three of the root symbols. It's a crescent of receptivity on top of a circle of spirit, on top of a cross of matter, symbolizing your eternal soul in the world of matter and how it thinks, how it receives information, processes that information, and communicates that information to others. Mercury is the messenger of the gods, guide of souls to the underworld, the planet of consciousness, communication, and coordination. Then down over here with the moon is Uranus. Uranus is also all three of the root symbols. It's a cross of matter on top of a circle of spirit with a crescent of receptivity on either side, symbolizing your eternal soul in the world of matter. And what makes it unique? What makes it unpredictable? Uranus is the primordial sky god, the planet of revolution, rebellion, innovation, independence, and the unexpected. So when you think about the midterm election, what's going on? I mean, feels like some kind of revolution is happening, some sort of unrest, but it's much more than just the full moon or even, lunar eclipse. There's other planets that are in direct alignment here with the sun and the moon. There's also Saturn over here at 18 degrees is only 2 degrees away from the moon and the sun, and this is a very intense aspect as well. It's a square. Saturn is a cross of matter with a crescent of receptivity pointed down, symbolizing the work that is required to achieve your ambitions in the material world. Saturn is the god of wealth and time, the planet of restriction, responsibility, achievement, and authority. So lots happening here with the full moon.
Yeah, you could say that.
You can see it too, it's like, what is this? It's tension. It's tension. Talk to me.
I was going to ask you that because I see a lot of red. on there,
Yes.
a lot of red lines that you have hand drawn on this chart. And I only see one blue line. So
Mhm.
what does that mean? So why do we only have one blue line and the rest is red? Like, what does that typically point to when we look at the snapshot, of November 8th?
So when I look at red lines, I see challenges. When I look at blue lines or green lines, which are not here, those are gifts. So we have one gift and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 challenges. So many more challenges. 8 challenges, one gift. But the challenges are there to inspire us to open our gift. The gifts are there to help us work on our challenges. And this gift is a very special gift, but we have to be willing to open it. And so, in order to understand how to open this gift, we really need to go back to the partial solar eclipse that occurred on October 25th with the new moon in Scorpio. So, the new moon in Scorpio, that was when the moon was over here. It was conjunct with Venus. And, actually, if you give me a second here, I'm going to, I can show you the chart that I drew for that as well. So give me
Oh,
1
perfect.
second.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was going to ask you more about that blue line, because if we know we have a gift in the middle of all the crunchy red lines, then to me, intuitively, that feels that the gift, that blue line, is something that we really need to pay attention to, because there
Yes.
could be a lot contained within that gift, that box that has the bow on top. And how do we work with it and why is it there? So, yes, please tell us more.
Well, okay. So the gift is where you're talking about Venus. So
Yeah.
when we're talking about Venus, Venus is Lady Luck, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships. Venus is, let me put this up here real quick. So here is okay, so here we've got the new moon. Here is the new moon right here. So Venus,
Oh, are you screen sharing?
yeah.
Oh,
So here,
perfect.
here was the new moon on the 25th. So Venus, when we're talking about Venus, Venus is a circle of spirit on top of a cross of matter, symbolizing your eternal soul in the world of matter and what it senses, the 5 physical senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Venus is Lady Luck, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships. So with the new moon in Scorpio, we had Venus, the sun, and the moon all in Scorpio. So what does this mean? In order to understand what it means, we want to look at the symbols here, or the signs. And in order to understand the nature of the signs, you want to ask yourself 4 questions. If you know the answer to these 4 questions, then it gives you a clear understanding of the nature of the sign. The 4 questions are: number 1, what is the element? Number 2, what is the modality? Number 3, what is the planetary ruler or rulers? And number 4, what is the symbol? So in looking at Scorpio, what is the element? The element is water. Water is more introverted than extroverted, because water is something where you are initiating the touch more so than water is initiating the touch with you. Water can nourish you by drinking it, or it can drown you. It's all how you're working with the energy. The modality of Scorpio is fixed. The modality is determined by the time of the season. The sun transits through a sign. When the sun is transiting through a fixed sign, it's the middle of the season. So too, when it transits through Scorpio, as it is right now, it's the middle of fall in the northern hemisphere. The third question: what are the planetary rulers? That's Mars and Pluto. So Mars is a circle of spirit with an arrow pointed in a clear direction, symbolizing your eternal soul and how it acts, how it moves forward without thinking. Mars is the god of war, the planet of action, aggression, and conflict. Pluto is like Mercury. It's all 3 of the root symbols, except instead of that crescent of receptivity on top of the circle of spirit, it's in between the circle of spirit and the cross of matter, symbolizing your eternal soul in the world of matter and the transformation that occurs to that soul. Pluto is the god of death, lord of the underworld, the planet of transformation. Now, the third question, what is the symbol? The symbol's the scorpion. And the scorpion is that creature that's very mysterious. You may see it for an instant. It's treacherous looking. Then it disappears into a crack in the wall, under a rock, into the sand, into the stream. Where did it go? What is it doing? Nobody knows. Therefore, Scorpio represents the world that we cannot see, the world that we can't pick up with the five physical senses. This is the world that represents the sixth sense. So when the sun, the giver of light, life, and vitality, is transiting through the deepest, darkest, most passionate sign, the sign that's ruled by the gods of war and death, we are seeing something going on in the magical realm. We can see the occult. We recognize taboo subjects. Secrets are shared, and maybe it's a little bit louder than normal, and we can actually hear the secrets that are being shared. It's very interesting that it always seems that elections, the big election, is always during Scorpio season. And there's some sort of bond that's being shared here because Scorpio represents karmic bonds, the bonds that we share with other people where we can't tell where we end and they begin. When they feel pain, you feel pain. When they feel joy, you feel joy. When they're angry at you, it keeps you up at night. These are the bonds that are forged through acts of intimacy, such as a verbal intimacy, like a secret, a physical intimacy like sex, or a financial intimacy like sharing money. So when you think about the election, what are you doing? You're going into this ballot box and you're secretly putting down who you want to win in the box, and you're sharing your secret with the election committee or whatever, and then this bond is forged where you are forging this connection with these people that that are electing you, or that you're electing them. And so it's very powerful energy. And when we go back to the new moon and we think about Venus is the planetary ruler of Taurus, and Taurus is what we're talking about with the full moon, because the full moon is in Taurus. Taurus, like Scorpio, is fixed. But because when the sun is in Taurus, it's the middle of spring in the northern hemisphere. But Taurus is an earth sign. Earth, like water, is more introverted than extroverted, because earth is something where you are initiating the touch more so than earth is initiating the touch with you. Earth can provide structure and a foundation, or it can bury you. It's all how you're working with the energy. The planetary ruler is Venus, and the symbol for Taurus is the bull. Here's the horns or the nose ring of the bull, however you want to look at it. But the bull is that creature that is very serene when it's in a wide open field with plenty of space around it, the cool grass beneath it, the warm sun baking on its back, and all the fragrances of the flowers, the field, the forest carrying into its senses. But if anyone gets too close to the bull, tries to move the bull, they meet an agitated bull. So this is about the five physical senses opposing the psychic realm. So the new moon was about setting your intentions to establish what you value, so that when you're merging power with others, they reflect, honor, or respect your values. Now, the full moon is a release. And part of that release is this, going back to this blue line, it's Venus connecting to Neptune. Neptune is the planet of compassion in Pisces, the most compassionate sign. So it's about finding compassion for your karmic bonds. It's about bringing dreams to life with those that you're bonded to. But if you weren't working with the energy, perhaps there's a lot of strain or stress with regards to those that you're bonded with. And there may need to be a release of those relationships, or at the very least, some sort of transformation, because that's what Scorpio is about. It's about transformation.
Okay, couple questions.
Yes.
I love how you explain astrology, and I know you wrote the basics of astrology, and everyone should buy a copy of it if they're interested in astrology. If you like Scott's style, go buy a copy of it. I'll include the link in the description below so they can grab that. when I hear you talk about Scorpio and Taurus and being fixed, a question that comes to mind is, does fixed, or maybe in all occasions, or maybe just in this axis that we're having these eclipses on, do you align that being fixed with fated or destined events, that karmic kind of energy, or does it have nothing to do with each other?
Fixed is the nature of the sign in terms of, you look at the symbols. The scorpion doesn't back down from anyone or anything, and neither does the bull. I think the fated energy comes from Scorpio, where it's interesting that Scorpio is a fixed sign, but yet it's the sign of transformation. It's like, well, how can I transform if I'm not moving? And I really think of it as like, the witch in her cauldron, she's just stirring it, but something's coming out of it. Or, two people having sex, they're moving, but they're not going anywhere. They're just in a space where they are, and that creates a child. Somebody dies, they're not going somewhere to die, they're dying in the place where they are. And so that is a transformation as well. So there is a fated energy, and it's very intense. It's like, what is the transformation that I'm supposed to be having right now? And if I'm not aware of what it is, the planets will let you know. They'll bring something into your life where it causes some sort of strain or stress. And there's a lot of strain or stress around this full moon with the opposition with Uranus. It's waking you up to your self-worth and what you value. And if you are not valuing yourself enough, and you are bonded to those that are draining your energy, that are stealing your magic, then there's going to be some sort of event that occurs that is meant to light you up and wake you up to, why am I sharing my magic here? I need to share it with those that are lifting me and that feel lifted by me, rather than those that are drained by me or that are draining me.
Yes. Yeah, as I'm listening to you, of course, like my clairvoyance and clairaudience kicks in, and it feels like seeing the things that maybe you haven't seen in quite this way, that is going to awaken you, where you can't, I know this is overused at this point in time, but you can't go back. So it's this massive, they're showing me like the symbolism. My spirit team is showing me a lighthouse, and how the light is going, and the light shines upon this thing, this revelation, and you can't unsee it. So yeah, that all makes sense to me. It feels like with the scorpion and the bull, that they're both agitated, they're both not willing to back down. So as it plays out in astrology, is it more like they then go after each other, or is it they're holding their own space and creating, the epiphanies and the upheaval around them, if that makes sense?
I think it's the latter. It's the latter, and I'm just thinking about like the midterm election, and so many people put their energy and their magic into red or blue, and there is this intensity behind it. But maybe the awakening is, you're putting your energy behind red or blue because maybe red adheres to your values more so than blue, or blue more so than red. But is either side really returning to you what you're putting into it? And so it might be more of a revelation that it doesn't matter how much of my energy or magic that I put into red or blue. It doesn't really change my life in the positive. And I need to focus on putting my magic, my energy, and investing that in those that I'm actually coming into contact with. rather than those that are just existing out there in, the fantasy of the TV or whatever.
Yeah, it feels like more of a focus and a compassionate hand holding with the people that are closest to you. More attention held for the people that are around you, rather than what you said, Scott, like the people that are what you hear about on TV, read about in the news. It's that focus to the community. An interesting point. I'm often asked, "Oh, who's going to win? The midterms? Is it going to go red, blue, both? Not whatever." So every single time I ask, my spirit team says to me, "Nobody really wins."
Exactly.
God, what
That's
an
the
answer.
point. That's the point. I mean, if you've been following politics as I have for the last 30 years, it doesn't matter who wins. Things always just kind of deteriorate a little bit more, because we need, and this is where the Saturn energy comes in here, because Saturn is restriction and responsibility, and it's transiting through the sign that it rules, Aquarius, which represents the community. How are you taking responsibility for your role in the community? What are you bringing to your community that's making your community a better place? Is it just voting for somebody and hoping that they do everything that you want them to do? I mean, it's about you taking the reason why these politicians have so much power is because normal people don't want to take responsibility for themselves. And so this is about the wake-up call here is, are you taking responsibility for your magic? Are you taking responsibility for the energy that you have within the physical manifestation of your soul? And most people aren't. Most people are escaping their reality and relying on someone else to do whatever needs to be done out there. And then they get upset when something isn't done the way that they want it to be done. And it's like, well, you have the power to do what you want to do. You have the power to really recognize your self-worth and what you value and how you share your energy and magic with those around you. Are you sharing it with those that leave you feeling lifted or drained? And so taking care of your magic, taking responsibility for your magic, honoring your self-worth. These are the themes. And then embracing your individuality and understanding that what you bring to your community is different and special. It's different from what everyone else brings. And we need your unique energy. So it's important for you to develop your magic and share it with the collective so that we can all benefit from your gifts.
This is one of those conversations where I feel like, myself included, we're going to have to listen to this a few times because there's so much packed into this. And I hope and I trust that the people watching this will share it, because sometimes we even will, tap on somebody's shoulder and say, "Hey, you should do this, or you should do that," or "Hey, take your power back," or "Hey, dump her," right? And to me, what I'm hearing is you are being faced now, especially with the energy we had on October 25th, the energy that's activated November 8th, and the sphere of energy that these eclipses, put into our lives. You're at a fork in the road. And to me, it feels like you're either going to have to do this work and own your magic and bring your unique gifts to the table and go local and go micro and help the people around you. Or to me, it feels like if you don't and you keep pointing the finger outwards, that it's going to keep feeling like the Scorpio kind of like digging in and feeling like, or even the Taurus energy, as you mentioned, like the earth kind of coming and piling on top of you, where it could feel, maybe a better word or simplification of it is like, you might feel like you're drowning, or you might feel like you're being buried alive, to give you that opportunity, if you haven't already, to go and activate your magic. It just, to me, and maybe I'm being a little overly dramatic, but it feels like this is an incredibly important time in our lifetime that could feel very intense, perhaps more so than any other level of intensity we've ever felt before.
The universe is asking you, what are you doing with your power? Are you sharing it and getting something in exchange that is of equal value, or are you giving it away? And are you allowing others to take it from you and use you? And so, there's a couple other points that I want to make about this alignment here. And it's beyond this. It's these two planets here, Jupiter and then Mars here, because they're in very unique historic spaces. Jupiter is moving through Pisces. These are the two planets that rule Pisces, Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter and Neptune were transiting through Pisces during, this was during, let's see here. So this was during December 28th to December 28th to May 10th. May 10th of this year. So December 28th, 2021 to May 10th of 2022. So now Jupiter moved back into Pisces. It's there from October 27th to December 19th. So we're having basically a 2-month period to experience what we experienced between May 1st and May 10th. And the next time that Jupiter and Neptune will be together in the sign that they rule, Pisces, will be 2176. So this is a multi-generational opportunity for us to really delve within ourselves, face our psychological baggage, the guilt, the shame, the regret, the blame, and show ourselves compassion so that we can integrate these thought patterns and memories with understanding, forgiveness, and love. Now, Mars down here, retrograde in Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. It's the sign of communication. I view this as kind of like an extended Mercury retrograde. Mars moved into its retrograde shadow on September 3rd. It began retrograde on October 30th. The retrograde ends on January 12th, but it doesn't move out of its retrograde shadow until March 15th. So if you're experiencing challenges with communication or technology, this is probably what it's about. But the interesting thing about Mars retrograde in Gemini, and to think about the intensity. So back to these two, the last time these two were together in Pisces prior to this year was back right before the Civil War. Mars retrograde in Gemini, the last time Mars was retrograde only in Gemini, as it is right now. It's retrograding back from 25 degrees to 8 degrees. There's been many times where Mars has begun retrograde in Cancer and moved back to Gemini, or began retrograde in Gemini and moved back to Taurus. But the last time that Mars was like this, where it moved retrograde only in Gemini, the dates for that is really, I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is very ominous, I guess maybe the word is. But the last time Mars was retrograde only in Gemini was October 28th, 1943 to January 10th, 1944, which was during World War II. The time before that Mars was only retrograde in Gemini was October 24th, 1864 to January 5th, 1865, which was during the Civil War. So to say things are intense right now, it might be an understatement, but what Mars is doing here in Gemini, it's encouraging you to listen, to ask questions, to remain curious. This is it's really challenging us to say, you know what, maybe I don't have all the answers. What can I learn? Because when you think about where Mars was retrograde in Gemini during World War II, and then before that, the Civil War, and here we are again, why do wars happen? They happen because people are not talking anymore. They're fighting. And so how can we keep the conversation going to learn a little bit about a lot, to gather information before we make a decision, rather than assuming that I know? Like, ask some other people that view the world differently than you. Maybe you'll learn something from them, and you'll invite them to ask questions of you so that they can learn something from you. And through sharing this knowledge, hopefully we can find peace with one another.
There's so much good stuff in here. Couple of questions as we begin to close this out. There are astrologers that have different thoughts on how long this energy is going to be activated. Now, I know we've talked about October 25th, we've talked about November 8th, we've talked about the retrograde that you were just mentioning, which sounds like a lot of it is going to come up to the surface or have some kind of crescendo in March, is what I'm hearing. But as it pertains to eclipse season and perhaps the retrograde, do you feel like March is how long it's going to extend out to? Do we feel like we're going to be in this energy even longer? Do you have a sense of how long this is going to last?
I mean, I look at everything in different stages. Right now, I'm looking at, like, where do I want to be by mid-January? What am I working on right now with myself, with my business, with the people in my life? Where do I want to be by mid-January? But then also by mid-March, once that retrograde shadow ends with Mars. So everything that I'm working on right now is earmarked or planned out from now to mid-January, and then mid-March. And so, but as far as the energy of like the eclipse and that sort of stuff, I feel like it's a shorter period, but there's, because there's going to be other new moons and full moons and so on and so forth. But this kind of sets the tone for the new moons, or the next eclipse that's coming up in 2023. So right now, it's like, who are you merging your power with? Do the people that you're merging your power with honor, reflect, or respect your self-worth? And what can you learn from those around you? How can you embrace your individuality and share your unique gifts with those in the community? That's the focus.
I feel it, like my heart is so expansive right now as we're having this conversation. And I love how you're giving people really down-to-earth, practical ways to work with the energy. Couple more quick questions.
Yes.
Are there any signs that you think will be feeling this the most? We know we're on a Scorpio Taurus axis with the eclipses. Are they going to feel it the most, or are there other signs? Or is it just like, hey, we're at this fork in the road and everyone's going to feel it in a different area of their life?
It's always one of those funny things, because it's, and I always hate to generalize, like, this sign that, or that sign this. It really, like, you can see like how complex this puzzle is, and it really depends on who has planets around 16 degrees in water signs, water signs, earth signs, or fixed signs. I feel like the ones, just if I'm going to be general, that are going to feel it the most intensely are really going to be the Aquarius and Leos. because, if you were born with the sun in Aquarius or Leo, maybe it's not at 16 degrees, or maybe there's other planets there. The Mercury is never more than one sign away from the sun. Venus is never more than two signs away from the sun. But Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio, these are the fixed signs. But the ones that have the greatest challenge with Taurus and Scorpio are Leo and Aquarius, because they're fixed, so they make a strong connection. But air and water don't mix. Earth and water extinguish fire. Fire boils water. Fire scorches earth. So the biggest challenges will most likely be for those that were born with key astrological points or planets in Leo or Aquarius, but also, Scorpio and Taurus as well, going to feel that intensely. But for those that were born with key astrological points or planets in Cancer, Virgo, Capricorn, and Pisces, this could be a really exciting time for them, where they're really feeling like, wow, like the magic's happening for me. I don't know how all of a sudden, but here it is. So yes, it all depends on your unique astrological code, but that's the sort of general reading, I would say.
Well, yeah, and Scott does astrology sessions.
Yes. So if you want to know how this transit is affecting you, or any transit is affecting you directly, then contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. You can schedule an appointment right through my website.
It's easy. It's really easy. Go on the website. You'll find it. Your website's really well done, by the way. So,
thank you. Big thanks to Ingrid, my podcast partner. She's the one that designed it. So big
cool.
Thanks to Ingrid.
She's so cool. I love her. I just like, I'd hang out with her. Like,
totally.
I don't really drink beer, but I'd have a beer with her.
Everyone. I'm not sure if Ingrid even drinks beer. She might have a glass of wine with you, but yeah, she's definitely somebody that everyone wants to hang out with, for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, it's called the Weekly Transit Astrology. So make sure you go subscribe to Scott and Ingrid's podcast there. One last final question.
Yes.
Are you seeing that war, the energy of war, is going to be internal, external, or both?
Well, yeah, both, I think, for sure. And, it goes back to that Jupiter Neptune in Pisces. Like, we really have to delve within ourselves and face our psychological baggage rather than trying to escape from it or deflect it or hide from it. We have to face our psychological baggage and the demons that carry them with compassion, so we can integrate these thought patterns and memories with understanding, forgiveness, and love. And then that Mars in Gemini, which, like I said, the last two times it has been retrograde in Gemini has been in war, when it was only in Gemini, is what I'm saying. So World War II and the Civil War. So obviously those were times where people weren't talking, they were fighting, and that's how they were trying to levy their disagreements. But if we can be at peace with ourselves and be at peace with ourselves enough to be willing to have the courage to gather information from other people, to really learn about what's important to others and why, and then that creates the avenue for them to ask you, so that everybody feels heard, then we're at peace. But I'm not sure if everybody is adhering to what the planets are instructing, because most people don't even know that, like, this is going on.
Yeah, I think about that sometimes, like, gosh, in my earlier years when I didn't even really know what astrology was or what the transits were, and now I'm like, oh my God, kind of like the Lighthouse, like you can't unsee it. Once you know that we have all of these helpers there trying to guide us and hold our hand, then you want to work with them all the time.
And that's, I love that you bring up the Lighthouse, because that's something that I've been saying. Maybe you're reading my mind, but like I always, I've been saying, I want to be a lighthouse and not a tugboat. I'm not trying to force people to the shore. Hey, you got to listen to me because, otherwise the world's going to end and all this stuff. It's like, no, here I am. I'm sharing the knowledge, the right people that find me, and whatever I'm sharing is resonating with them in a positive way, then those are the people that I'm meant to be communicating with and connecting with and sharing the knowledge with, and everyone else is on their own path, and I love them and send them blessings as well. So
Absolutely. Scott, you have been a wealth of information and you are delightful. And I'm so glad that you could join us today. I encourage everybody listening to this, please share it with a few people. If this resonated with you, please share it with your friends, your family, those that may be more open to the helpers that we have with our astrology, our planets. And again, for sessions, you can go to theweeklytransit.com. And as I mentioned, I'll put your link in the description below as well. But you wrote the book, The Basics of Astrology. And if you dig Scott's style, you will love this book. So please pick up a copy. And maybe there are people in your life for the holidays that would really enjoy getting this book as part of the holiday season. So I love giving books for gifts. And yeah, I think this would be a really good one for people to give this year as like a roadmap, helping them to understand what really is available for us to access and make a part of our life every day. So Scott, thank you. Again, I'll put the links to Scott's work down below. And for anything related to me and my company, you can go to spiritandspark.com, all spelled out. Scott Tejerian, thank you so much for being a part of our show today.
You're welcome, Dallisa. It's an honor and a privilege to share this information with you. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We'll see everybody soon.